Hi there, and welcome to my video series on digital interactive notebooks. It's a series of videos where I'm showing a bunch of different activities that you can put in a digital interactive notebook rather than the composition books with the cutting and the pasting and all that. So, today I'm going to talk about the 3-2-1 bridge and 3-2-1 reflections in general. It is a great strategy for building background knowledge and activating schema. So let's get into it. First of all, I wanted to bring up a few points about why you might want to use the 3-2-1 bridge activity. So it's a good activity to spark discussion about plots, themes, and issues that students will encounter in the text. It's a great activity to assess the students' prior knowledge and to have them making predictions about what will happen in a text, um, for building background knowledge in preparation for unfamiliar topics and issues in a text, and to generate excitement for the reading of a text. So here we go. A 3-2-1 activity that you might be familiar with is the KWL. Three things that you know, one thing, two things you wonder, and one thing you learned. Something lots of teachers have used for many, many, many years. So the 3-2-1 bridge is kind of like a KWL, but it's a little bit more complex. Here's how it works. So step one is activating schema and recording background knowledge prior to a video or a text. These lessons that I created were for during distance learning, so it was mostly a video, sometimes a text. Doesn't matter. Whatever the input is that's going to help build their background knowledge. Before the video or text, you have them record what do they already know. Then you have the input where they watch a video or read a text, and that is where you're building their background knowledge. For example, I did a novel unit on refugee, and I thought that my students wouldn't be very familiar with the experience that refugees have. So before we started the text, we watched a video about what does it mean to be a refugee. Step three is to record. Oh, I made a misspelling. Whoopsie. To record their new thinking after the input. And then finally, this is where I have a lot of stuff that maybe you haven't seen before, is where they share their thought processes and explain their thinking and reflect. And this is where you really get into how a digital notebook is a lot more interactive and involves a lot more collaboration and communication and all those other good things that you don't get with the cutting and pasting notebooks. So here's what my introduction to it looks like. And I go over this with them if it's their first time and let them know that, hey, there's 3 steps here. First, we're going to do this side. Second, we're going to watch the video or read the text. And then third, we're going to do the second part of the activity. And their page, so that's my page where I give them directions and I give them the link to video or whatever. Then their page looks like this, and there's 2 versions of it. Initially, I had done that top version mostly. If you've seen my other work before, it kind of looked more like that top version. And I've since kind of updated how I did it because I felt like the kids were really limited to getting what they wanted to say in those tiny little boxes, and it just wasn't working out so good for me. So I have an updated version now, but I have both of them in my templates if you're getting my templates. But anyways, I like that bottom version a little bit better because it gives them a little bit more freedom for how much they want to say on their slide. Step 2 is that video part. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a video. It's usually a video for me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about where you can get resources for that video section, but also to look at some possibilities for using multiple sources of information, which I think is really awesome. So this is something, if you've seen some of my other lessons, there's a couple pictured here. I did the novel unit on PAX for the Global Read Aloud, and I did a big thing on refugee. And I will often include a multimedia text set. And I want to talk a little bit about why you shouldn't do that the first time, but we'll get to that in a second. A good place to find videos is TED Ed, one of my favorites, love them. Or if you have a short video that you found on YouTube that you want to use, you can put that into something called Ed Puzzle, and then you can add questions in there, which I think is very cool. Brain Pop is another one that has a lot of cool videos for the kids. And I also really got into vocabulary, but you have to kind of have the paid version of that. But during distance learning, we had that, and I learned to really love their videos. So they're very cool. So you have single video to give them or a multimedia text set. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those. So in the beginning, when you're first trying out this activity with students and they're just getting used to it, start with a single video. Don't give them a multimedia text set the first time. Then start leveling up. So give them a smaller multimedia text set that maybe just has a couple of resources. I've shown some pared down versions that I've done here. There was one that I did for refugee that was just about Cuba. And then there was one that I did for the wild robot. So they're a little bit smaller than the ones that you just saw. And I wouldn't even go with that until you've done the activity with just a single video only. And the other thing also to consider is when you're giving them this smaller multimedia text set, you can also not require them to do every single resource on the page. Tell them to choose 2 or 3, whatever you want to do. But just kind of keep in mind how challenging you're making the activity the first couple of times they're doing it, so they can get comfortable with the activity before making it very challenging with a lot of resources. So after the video, the text set, whatever it is you're doing, then you have part 3, which is where they fill in the bottom part of the 3-2-1 or the right-hand side of the 3-2-1. And they talk about their learning. They record new thinking, new questions, describe their learning. And I have them wrap up with a single sentence that kind of summarizes everything. I used to think, but now I think. So this is where the after part is on their page. Either if you're using that top version, it's the bottom of the page. If you're using version 2, then it's on the right-hand side of the page. There are a lot of ways to integrate technology with this activity. A lot of times I've used Padlet. I used to be a big fan of Padlet. I'm not going to pay for Padlet anymore. So if you're a person who likes a lot of my Padlets, you better make a copy because I'm done paying for Padlet. I've been paying for it for like 10 years now. Wakelet is free. I would recommend that as an alternative, but I really like Jamboard. I'm so into Jamboard. So with all my templates that I've made, I've already made a Jamboard for you. So you can get a link to copy my Jamboard versions of my notebook pages. But yeah, love the Jamboard. And I also really like to use my activities from my digital notebook to then have class lessons using Pear Deck or Nearpod for interactive slides. That way I'm not, creating multiple things. All my lessons is in the notebook, and it's either we're doing it all together or you have this page where you're doing it on your own. Let's take a look at what those versions look like. So this is a Jamboard version of the activity, and there's a lot of empty space on this page so that there's room for however many students you have in your class to all drop a Post-it note on the page with their 3 words that they connected to the topic. 2 questions that they were wondering about, 1 analogy about the topic. The first few times that you do this activity, you're really going to have to help them with what is an analogy. I find that that is a super challenging thing for them to do, but I've never changed it to something simpler because I think it's an important thing to be able to do. So, and it's just basically, how would you describe this to somebody by comparing it to something else? So it's really not that hard if you kind of explain it in a super basic way to them. But that's what their 3-2-1 looks like in a Jamboard version. One thing that I have added to the Jamboard version for my classes and in my template slides is this second extra layer of pause and reflect. So I really like students to see other students' responses as much as possible. I want the kids to see, what did everybody else say? Then after we've done that in the Jamboard and they've seen, these are all the other words my classmates said were connected to the topic. These are all the questions my classmates had. Then we do this pause and reflect part afterwards. So 3 things that they learned from examining other people's work, 2 words, because the 3 was 3 words. So 2 words that seem to come up repeatedly. I think that's an important one, and I use that a lot in a lot of my activities because I think if something is coming up repeatedly, it's important, and kids should learn to notice that. And then the last one is one misconception that a lot of people had about this topic. Now, I know a misconception is a hard word, but I kept it in there anyways because I want my students to learn bigger words. So I kept it in there, but then I explained this would have been shown in the I used to think, but now I think statements. And then there's one additional thing that we do, an aha. So what is an aha moment? I had an aha moment when I read this, and explain how it made you think about the text or the topic in a different way. But that's basically it for the whole 3-2-1 activity. This is part of a series of previewing texts that I've done. The other videos that are on my channel that you could check out are categories, which is a great one. I love that one. It's one of my favorites. Text graffiti, and where do you stand, which also sometimes is called a theme anticipation guide. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's basically looking at some opinion statements related to a theme before a text. But anyways, how do you decide which lesson is right before the reading of a text? I made a little chart for you. So the 3-2-1 bridge, which we've just gone over today, does not use quote from the text. Not so much predicting and inferring, but you could probably add that. But definitely vocabulary words, that part where they're saying 3 words that they connect to the text. And a lot of times before we watch a video or have a text, I will front load the vocabulary that they're going to encounter, especially if we're just doing a single video and it's in the beginning when we're just learning how to do 3-2-1. I will give them a vocabulary list of words that are going to come up. Also for summarizing, it's great for summarizing, great for activating schema and building background knowledge. And you can see what those other activities, what skills those other activities will kind of hit on. So depending on the type of text that you're reading, you would want to choose one of these different activities. If it's something that they're not going to be very familiar with the vocabulary words, then I would go with a 3-2-1 bridge or a categories. And I would give them some additional pre-teaching of the vocabulary along with that. The 3-2-1 bridge is a little different from categories because it can also help if you're going to be going over a text where there's topics and issues, like the refugee example that I gave, that are unfamiliar with the kids. That would be a really good one to use with the 3-2-1 bridge. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching my video. Make your own templates for the notebooks If you don't have time for that and you don't want to, you can get mine. I'm selling my notebooks, pre-made notebooks for different texts, but also templates that you can use, already made templates, but the vocabulary words and all that good stuff isn't in there. So you can customize it to whatever text it is that you're going to be reading. And it comes with a teacher's guide to explain everything and give you some tips for how to do that. Also wanted to plug my new website. It'll say coming soon right now as of today. If you go there, I have about 2 weeks left before it is live. I've been working really hard on it for almost a year now. But my two former websites, the Booksom, Middle School Mind, combining that all into one all-encompassing thing. So thanks for checking out my videos.